Well, it appears I've made a bad life choice there because I started eating a very chewy sweet as the countdown started. And it's still in my mouth. Never mind. Happy Sunday, everyone. First Sunday of February 2022, if you can believe that. How did we end up this far? Trying a new camera angle out. We'll see how we get on, see how we like it. Let's just tilt that up a bit. Too high. There we go. I think that's about all right. You can see all the fabulous sets above. Who have we got tonight? We've got Spawn. As always, good evening, Mr. Spawn. Or we assume it's Mr. Spawn, but yeah, good evening to you. Ultron, son of Raceface. Good evening. We've got me, but we're not bothered about that one. But yeah, how has everybody been? How's your Sunday been so far? How has your weekend been? Has anybody been up to anything exciting? Let us know in the chat. Whilst you're doing that, if you haven't, one thing I would say, hey, James, how's it going? And we've got a couple more. Brixia Pennies, Bebo, how do? And the man himself. I'm not talking about the camera angle. Lovely indeed, Harvey. Lovely indeed. Are you still on the drink? Hey, the Lecoid. Good evening. Got a nice crowdy at night. But yeah, what was I going to say? What we've been up to this week. So, big Book of Boba Fett episode, which I think it was fair to say. I think it's even more fair to say we'll be talking about that series as a whole quite a bit tonight with our guest. So I won't go too much into it. I bought you just can't see it, but I picked up the Snowtrooper Battle Pack, which is for my only Lego purchase of the week. Not buying any Lego outside of VIP events, clearly going well. But yeah, just another, I don't know, it's been a very, very busy week. TikTok has just been ticking along, no pun intended, quite nicely. But I must confess as well, get rid of that sweet. I had my very first alcoholic beverage of the year this weekend as well. Friday night, been a tough week, both for me and the missus, and I just thought, sod it, let's go to the pub, let's get some dinner there, and we'll go from there. But, you know, what? It's fine. Everything in moderation, that's the one. I'm having a cup of tea now, having a drink. This time last year, I'd have been having a beer, or before Christmas, I'd certainly been having a beer. But anyway, enough of that. Good evening, everyone. And this is the Opie-Verse episode 23. Can you believe? And tonight's guest is someone very well known to the channel, known to someone very well in the channel indeed, or in the comment section. What I would say is I expect to be quite heavy on Star Wars tonight. I don't want to scare anybody away, but the Book of Boba Fett will highly likely be a big topic of conversation tonight, given the guest and myself, and just how kind of that episode went and how the series is going so far. We're a couple of days out from the final episode. So with that, if you haven't seen it and you don't want it to be spoiled, I would recommend leaving now and coming back and watching it after you've watched it. But if you're happy to stay, then get comfy, get relaxed. If you haven't already, hit that like button and we'll get the party started. And we'll do so by introducing my guest of the evening. You probably know him from TikTok. You might know him from Instagram, or you might even know him from when he came on the Opie-Verse Christmas special. That was a big noisy night with all the lads and a couple of the lasses. But I give you James, aka Darth Veritas. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. Yourself?
I'm all right. It's Sunday evening, so like, how good can you really be on a Sunday evening? But it is what it is. It is what it is. We have this. It perks up our weekend. And it's just got a little bit better because little Opie has just come to CL, or I don't know if this is his first appearance on the. I forgot to shut the door, so he's come through. Yeah. How's your day been? How's your weekend been? How's your year going so far?
It's good this weekend. I've had my girlfriend come and visit me. So we've just had like it was date night last night. So we went out to a pretty cool restaurant. We just like chill out all day today, just watching some Disney Plus, trying to convince her to watch Star Wars. She's still not on it. So it's a losing battle. I'm just gonna have to like face it. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
So if you're not watching Star Wars on Disney Plus, what are you watching?
We just started watching a new series, which I'm going to highly recommend. It's that Pam and Tommy thing with Sebastian
Okay,
Stan playing
yeah,
Tommy Lee. It's actually
yeah.
like pretty decent and really funny. So yeah, I'd give that a good recommendation.
Do you know it seems like the least Disney thing ever,
Yeah,
like Pam and Tommy Lee. But I think that's like a really positive thing, especially as
Mm,
like Star Wars Marvel fans, because we always expect our content to be almost somewhat watered down because it's Disney. But things like
sure.
that show that actually that's not going to be the case, which I think
Mm.
we're starting to experience anyway, which is pretty good. But what's the setup as it? Is it how many episodes? How far into it are you?
I'm not sure how many episodes there is. It seems to be about 40 minutes ish long an
Mhm.
episode. Seth Rogen's in it, and it kind of
Oh
seems to be
yeah, I saw
centered
that.
around like yeah, it seems to be centered around like the whole sex tape thing, like back in the
Yeah.
day with Tommy Lee and Pam Anderson, and it's Seth Rogen is playing the carpenter where they're restructuring Tommy Lee and Pam's house. And
Right.
Tommy Lee's just acting horrible. He's just being the arrogant, typical rock star that was back then. Ends up firing them, doesn't pay them for the job because he claims that they're bad. And then this is where Seth Rogen is like, you know what? No, I'm gonna take my money that he never paid me. So he ends up robbing the safe, and then that's where he comes across the famous tape between
Ah,
them. And then
right.
that's where, so that's as far as I got up to. We just had a flashback episode about how Tommy and Pam met. So it's giving you that emotional depth of like, oh, so what's this tape going to really do to your relationship after, it's going to get leaked. So I'm actually
Yeah.
excited to watch the next episode. It's pretty cool.
No, do you know, I wish I'd watched some of it now, because it's in my head. I need to watch it, but it's
Yep.
just not drawn to it.
It's
Not
worth a
to
watch. Absolutely. The first episode will grab you. It really will.
nice. Nice. And I suppose if for you and the missus, you can then be like, well, whilst we're on Disney Plus, can we try a bit of this or try a bit of that? But trust us, man, I've been fighting that battle for 7 years. Well, I suppose
There
two
you
and a
go.
half years since we got Disney Plus, and should watch everything. But apart from that, for sure. But where did you? Because you're in York, right? So where
Yeah.
did you go? Because York has some decent food places. So where did you end up?
There's loads. Yeah. I can't remember the place. There's like a good few fancy restaurants, and we last night was our early Valentine's dinner because Valentine's falls on a Monday and we're both working. And
Yeah,
I'm working next Saturday, so it's going to be really tight. So we figured, oh, we'll just have an early Valentine's. I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but it's pricey, but it's worth it. You got some really good vibes around you. You got like a live DJ there, and he's just like,
nice.
he's on the mixer, and he's just like surrounded by like just some happy people. Waiter's really cool as well. Food is exquisite. So yeah, it's really cool.
What did you get?
I
This could quite easily become an hour and a half of me talking about food, by the way. So like,
I got like a beef shin risotto.
oh,
Um,
nice.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a risotto guy, but like last time me and my girlfriend went there, she had it and I tried a bit. I'm like, that's just better than anything I've ever tasted before. So made a point of having it. So absolutely, it was awesome. Really, really cool.
Starter or dessert?
No dessert, but we had the star. I had chicken wings, which was like laced with like
Similar.
some lemon and garlic. And a little bit of garlic butter on the side as well. It was just this, it's just perfection. I could just go back there all over again.
You had me at chicken wings, to be honest. They
Yeah,
are when they're done right, they are
yeah, I'm a sucker for
incomparable, I
chicken
would say.
wings.
Yes, indeed. So, by the way, I was saying in the beginning,
Hmm.
I built a little bit of Lego. I didn't go into it because the last time you were on and the last time we spoke, you were
Hmm.
saying you're not really a Lego guy. We won't hold that
Right.
against you, but you were tempted with this, which is the Ahsoka
Yeah.
brickhead.
Anything with
So,
Ahsoka is a good tempt. Yeah.
so I built that last night. I bought it last week when I was at the Lego store,
Mm.
and that is a really cool set. Like the brickheads are a bit divisive, and I think we talked about this and saying that are they designed to kind of compete with Funko a little bit, and we'll never really know. But that is a really cool set. And what makes it a really cool set is at its price point, it has printed pieces. Now, a big pet peeve of a lot of Lego creators is stickers, because you're like, come on, like you pay like a couple £100 for a set and you've got to put the stickers on yourself. But the kind of the print and the art, like the white around there, though those are printed pieces, and those will only exist for this set because they just won't work on any of the sets. So it comes with my recommendation, and it's a great starter set. All I would say is it might give you the bug, and then you might think, there you go.
Maybe. it's worth a look. Absolutely. Yeah.
What I'd also see as well is there is an AAT set, which is like the little droid tank that they use. So they have different variants of colors of them. That comes with basically that Ahsoka as a minifig. If you get that, it's worth having the minifig, because then you've got like that. That set's like 20 odd quid. It's retiring this year. I'd recommend just picking that up, and just, even if that is all your collection, because it's Ahsoka, and go from there.
Fair enough.
But that's all I'll say on the matter.
Sure.
But yeah, so guys, this is one, I usually do this at the beginning, but I'm just going to kind of drop this on now, because I feel like it's going to be such a talking point, and I feel like things we might go off and not talk about the Book of Boba Fett, and then all of a sudden find ourselves back to it. So I'm just going to put this on now, and I'm just going to leave it on, and we'll just go from there. But James, big point. I suppose double-barreled, but how are you finding the series so far? And then kind of how did you find this week's episode? And that'll probably take us up to an hour.
Yeah, there's a lot of deep dive with that. So like when we're starting off with the episode, it's already answering some fundamental questions that we always speculated about what really did happen with Boba Fett after, his supposed death. We knew he was alive, but how did he survive? And it was just all, so we had all these really cool questions answered in the first few minutes of the starting thing. We thought, that's awesome. You've given the fans exactly what they want. Now we're going to move on to progressing the story. What is the goal of Boba Fett? And he explains it perfectly with Fennec Shand, with him just tired of, taking all the risk from what he calls idiots. They don't know how to really run an operation. I do. I've seen it from both sides. I'm the perfect guy for this. And, 100% agree with Boba. I can see where some of the fans are getting a little bit impatient, I'll say, with the progression of Boba. Like, oh, he's not really doing much. He doesn't really seem too involved. And I'm there thinking, but this is exactly what we would expect from someone that's wanting to turn away from bounty hunting. He has to think differently. He has to act differently. He has to treat people differently. He's not just, oh, you're useless to me, I'm going to kill you. Because like what we hear from the trailer, I intend to rule with respect. And he ain't going to get any respect just by, discarding people. So he has to approach things very, very differently. And then we do a complete 180 in the last two episodes, where we have Mando, who, he just completely steals the show. And I think everybody can agree on that. That whole bounty hunting mission to, learning a little bit more about the Darksaber and, Bo-Katan and everything like that. So he completely still stole the show for me. I'm thinking, this is not Mando season 3. This is Boba Fett right now. I need to stay focused here. And then Boba Fett gets his little cameo in the very last episode that we saw. But I saw this episode not so much as Boba's anymore. It started as Boba to say, well, this is what he's going to do. But towards the end, we're now like, well, we have, the last episode was a branching episode is what I'll call it. We have Ahsoka turning up. This is a setting up for Ahsoka. We now know that there's a connection with her and Luke and Grogu. There is a potential, I would always hope for this because I could have watched this all day long. There's a potential series there with Luke training Grogu, or training anybody for that matter. Just watching him train was astonishing. It was just beautiful to watch. So that could be setting something up. We have Mando being set up for season 3, considering what he was told about the from the armorer and his experience with Grogu, and what Grogu's decision might be at the end of said episode. And then, of course, we have a potential Boba Fett season 2 if they want to, push that off. So it's a good branching episode. It can go in so many different directions. And that's where my thoughts are. I'm seeing it still as Boba Fett's episode, but Boba is sort of sharing his spotlight with what is going to come out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he definitely has been overshadowed the last couple of episodes by Mando.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of things. I have a couple of thoughts on that, in that, first and foremost, I think it just shows how good forget about this is about mindset. It's about, are you a pessimistic person or you're an optimistic person? This for me just shows how good the Mandalorian is, right? And Boba is good, but Mando is just up there in elite. The next part of it, though, and I think this is so true of the fandom, is, and I use that term quite generally, but it all comes down to expectations. And I think because of when the Mandalorian was an unknown, and because of that, they could do whatever they wanted to him, and there was no. They used the Easter eggs in a different way, just to keep people engaged and keep reminding people, this is Star Wars, this is the Star Wars universe, but this is our guy. But with Boba Fett, everybody's got a perception of Boba Fett, and everybody's got a perception of what they want Boba Fett to be, and they judge him or this based on that perception of what they expected, rather than, and that's fine. And I get, because I have my own expectations, and actually I'm really enjoying it. And but people seem to be unaware of that. It's their expectations driving their opinion, and they can't let go almost.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing with the sequels as well. And to be honest, even going back to when I was a kid, the prequels, people had their expectation of what those films were going to be. They weren't, and what those actors were going to be, and were somewhat problematic. But yeah, it's Mando is just, I think it's just something to be celebrated. Look, Mando is just that good. And maybe, when they were putting it together and they were writing it, maybe they just didn't realize how much that he was just set beyond the Boba story in what they were doing, and how much we all wanted to see that. But yeah, I didn't think I would ever see this, but they could have given us less and I'd still have been happy.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, it's not surprising to me that Mando is more successful than Boba. Looking at the end results, forget that we've had the Boba Fett show. If this just didn't exist at this point, and someone was talking about doing a Boba Fett show, I would still be in the mindset to say I think Mando would still be much better, only because it's risky when you're introducing a brand new character, but when you have it as set as to say he's a fairly young Mandalorian, he's a fairly young bounty hunter. We're expecting him to go on, a lot of missions, and this is happening after the 6th episode. So this is 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So we're looking at a whole new world that we haven't seen. I mean, minus the sequels, but this is 30 plus years into the future at this stage. So we're seeing a completely new world about how the galaxy is building themselves back up.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at someone like Mando, a completely new person, we're all very easily putting ourselves in Mando's shoes, so to speak. We are seeing the world through his eyes. We're seeing the galaxy through his eyes. We are being introduced to different areas of the galaxy that are having to restructure themselves. We're seeing sites of the New Republic, taking charge again. We're seeing all that. And to me, that was just so much more exciting that they're finally over what happened with Palpatine and the Empire. They're just over that now. They are moving on. They can just get back to normal.
Yeah, totally agree on that. And it's so, what is so good about that is the way that they've been able to do it. Because I've always thought we need to get away from the Skywalker saga. Like we've completed the Skywalker
Yeah.
saga. Let's take a break from that and let's like explore the other like time periods. But what they've done quite cleverly is they've steered exactly what you've said there. They've steered in that universe, but they've given us a guy who had no idea who those people were. He was just like, he's like the Jedi. Never heard of the mate. Like just which is brilliant. He doesn't even really know about Mandalorian culture, and he's a Mandalorian. He only knows what he's been told, and it's just exactly what you just said there. He's a great like viewpoint to just see this whole new galaxy in that big wake of that. So it'll be interesting to see how far they take it though as well. Like will they, will they take it all the way up to the sequel period? I don't know.
I would like to. I would really enjoy them to be able to do that, because I mean the sequels just get so much hate for what I would jump on your point about fans' expectations. They were expecting certain things from the sequels, they didn't get it, so it's labeled trash. But for the people out there, such as myself, that did enjoy those movies, it's always good to have things that will fill in those gaps. I mean, we have 30 years worth of history there before the sequels to, bring us to that point. So I feel like Mando is not going to be the only new person that they're just going to create to tell the story. Yeah. I feel like we're going to get more people that's going to, just throw in a few extra bits. We're probably going to get some cameos from the sequels. We're talking years by now at this point, because right now I feel like they're just solely sticking to the nostalgia aspect, because that is a very good key story driver, because it's keeping us interested, especially with Luke reappearing. And, the fact that we've now linked the prequel era to the original era with Ahsoka and Luke. And now that we've had them meet and they've clearly had a discussion about him, about Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship. Especially when she's dropped the line of "You're so much like your father."
Yeah,
I needed to be a fly on the wall in that conversation. I just needed to hear what questions Luke had for her and what answers Ahsoka's willing to give. I always was so under the impression that Ahsoka would just avoid Luke at all times, because she would just be so like, she just didn't want to relive everything that happened with Anakin. Like, she was just so heartbroken. I'm like, no, I can't do it, and he ain't going to want to hear those answers as well. But I feel like because Mando isn't going to be the first newcomer, we're going to get some more newcomers that's going to get us to the sequels eventually. And I feel like maybe if we can get that bridge, maybe a little less hate towards the sequels might come around. I don't know, but I don't know.
Well, we'll see. And good evening, Darth Chocolate. Nice to have you here. I think that resonates. Everybody was like when she said that, it was the perfect hat tip to that. And I definitely think on the sequels, I think the sequels need it because there are still so many kind of unanswered questions. But then that's the plan, right? Like, look at what they've done with the MCU. Star Wars is just like the MCU had a 10-year running head start on the Star Wars kind of where it is under Disney. So, judge it in 10 years. And they've already started to hint towards it with Grogu and taking his blood and then knowing what Snoke is. Like, is there a connection there? But I definitely think the sequels need it. But if you ask me, the prequels needed the Clone Wars series to kind of make it what it was and to give all that relevance. But a lot of people who've grown up have grown up with the Clone Wars being part of the sequels, so they didn't recognize that gap. It was just kind of, we have this. So I think you have to look at it in that context and say, okay, the reality is more Star Wars is good Star Wars. Like, there is no such thing as a bad thing. And I felt that about when Visions was released. Visions obviously very different, but that was an opportunity to play around with things, and people just kind of jumped on it. We're like, this is not for me. And I'm like, okay, it's not for you, champion.
Just move on, exactly.
Yeah. This is not Star Wars, but I will, because I don't know if he's still here, but what I found particularly interesting is Darth Choco shared the Cad Bane edit because people
All
would
right.
want to see it. So he picked it up off. Did you see that video or not? So it was
I didn't, unfortunately. No.
So someone on, and if you're still here, please share the name of the channel that did the edit. But they did an edit, a side by side of Cad Bane in the Book of Boba Fett. Then they reanimated him, like they darker blue. They changed the shape of his face and stuff like that.
It's the same animation from Clone Wars, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
So
I have seen that. I'm not sure if it was Choco's, but like the one that he shared. But yeah, I have seen that cut. It's really good.
So, Darth Choco shared it and just like, I think you guys might want to appreciate this and see this. And then everybody jumped on it. Like a lot of people jumped on it and were like, I can't believe you're criticizing it and stuff. He's like, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just sharing it. But at the same time, a lot of people were jumping on the whole Cad Bane thing. Well, you just like, there were so many good things in that episode. Why is your takeaway point? There were so many great things about Cad Bane. Like, I didn't even think about his skin tone because for me, I think it was more in line with Duros's that we've seen. Like, it was more that pure rather than that bold blue. But yeah, interesting one. But what did you make of Cad Bane?
I made a reaction video. It's all there. I was just like, I saw someone, obviously we all saw that, but when you saw him coming in the distance, the far off distance, I mean, that whole scene just threw the good, bad, the ugly at me. That whole, duelist thing going on. And I was like, this is just the perfect Western for my absolute passion. But as soon as I saw someone come in, it didn't click straight away. And I was like, all right, who's this? Who's coming in? Who's like, what's going down here? And then as he's getting closer, I'm just getting the specs of like the hat and I can just about see the skin tone. And I'm like, oh, and then like the penny drops. I'm so excited. I'm like, no way. Because I was so under the impression that Cad Bane's lifespan had gone like 10 years prior, because he must be around 80 odd years old in this stage. And I thought I read somewhere, now I've never, I don't know if this ever was canon or not, or if there's something else that they've, done a turnaround on. But I thought Duros' species lived up to about 70 odd years old. And when I saw that, and I thought, okay, so either what I read wasn't canon, or he's done something to himself to maybe prolong his life a little bit. But at the same time, what's he done so dramatically that's able to keep him as sharp as he was in the Clone Wars with his quick draw skills? So I got to ask myself the questions like, how are you still standing? Like, where's your walking stick, man? Where are you at? But yeah, just as equally excited to see that he's still got it. Like he clips off Cobb Vanth and he takes out his deputy like they are nothing, and he just walks away with, that is the message I'm leaving you with. I've told you what's what. You are down, your protectors are down. I'm gonna walk away now. Here's your message, do what you want with that. And that's just I'm just so glad it was his voice as well. It just wasn't some of the variation, it was just his voice. It's perfect.
So on that point, actually, with the Luke scene, the deep fake and the CGI is on point.
Yeah.
Was it still Mark Hamill's voice?
He was credited. So
right.
I would like to think it was.
I've watched it twice and keep thinking, right, I need to check the credits and then forget to check the credits. But I was talking about this on TikTok beforehand, because every time I've gone, I don't know about you, and I know you go live quite a bit on TikTok, but every time you go live, there's about 10 questions. Have you seen this week's Book of Boba Fett? So you kind of constantly talk about it, but your answer evolves. But the question I'd raised was, at what point do we start to normalize changing the characters changing the actors behind Star Wars? Because it's either that or let's move away from the Skywalker saga, because Mark Hamill isn't going to be around forever. It feels like we're only getting started on the next stage of Luke. I don't know. I feel sorry for the actor, the one who's putting all the effort in. And he's only credited in body instead of spirit.
Yeah, it's a very troubling and fine line when we're looking at someone who is, putting their physical body there, as you put it, and then just have him completely covered over with someone else entirely. I mean, this is what we had in the originals with Darth Vader. The actor behind that was just sort of like, his body's there, but it's the voice that's iconic, and it was never you. So we kind of have that in the modern day with deepfake. And it's, I think if we look in some other alternative universe, I mean, his name's been thrown around so many times, but if we had Sebastian Stan cast of him from the start, no one would complain. If you had anybody else that looked like Luke Skywalker, no one would complain, because, you get his hair right, you get his outfit on, you get his green saber, you know who it is. It doesn't matter if he looks like him, you know that it's him. And that is the main drive. But on the other side of the spectrum, I do understand that seeing Mark Hamill's very youthful appearance, it brings that I don't know if it's bringing in the original fans back, and it's the people, like when I was I mean, I'm a prequel kid, and that's where I started, and I don't know if it's bringing them two together at last by bringing that nostalgia aspect back, like we were talking about before. But I can see the balance there, and I imagine it would have been a hard decision about what they really wanted to do. Do they want an actor, or do they want to keep Mark's appearance intact? I personally don't think it matters, but what certain aspects of the community is going to take that out to be as.
And I feel what makes it really interesting is Mark. So if you then take Solo, where granted it was a movie, it was a standalone movie, but they recast the actor because Harrison was never going to do that. But Harrison is kind of, he came back for The Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, but he's notoriously kind of not interested in Star Wars. Whereas Mark Hamill is like, it feels like he just kind of walks around the Skywalker Ranch, or just like wherever they're filming stuff, and is like, have you got a couple of lines for me? Can I be that droid? Like,
I would always imagine Mark just like throwing stones outside of George Lucas's house, hitting his window, just saying, "Look, have you got something else for me at this stage?" Like, he would just be happy to just show
bikini
up
if I have to. Yeah, it just like his whole thing has always been Luke Skywalker or Mark Hamill. Like but I think what's different, I've seen other people do that. Like Carrie Fisher really struggled with that, whereas I think Mark Hamill really embraced it. But I think that probably made it more difficult, because they, as loyal as he is to them, they will be as equally as loyal to him. And maybe it's a final hurrah as they kind of work through, because the deepfake really kind of advanced in this series as well. And maybe they just kind of advance it by like turning it off a little bit more and a little bit more, and then normalize the guy behind it without us even noticing. Because I did go back and watch the last episode of Mando season 2 after watching that. I thought, like, I feel like whenever anything happens, I go back and watch that episode. And then I realized how different the deepfake was between those two characters, between like Luke in there and there. But,
huge difference, yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, the Cad Bane thing for me I think it was absolutely brilliant. They absolutely nailed it. And to your point as well, he not only got the deputy and then Cobb, but he also got the deputy first. So like that's how quick he was to get. You would think he would take Cobb out, knowing he's the real threat, and then switch the deputy, but went the other way around. So yeah, unbelievable.
I am curious as to where his little droid's gone though. Like, what happened to that little droid? Like, it's probably absolutely nothing integral to the storyline, but I'm someone that just always wants to know everything. I need to know where his little droid went.
I have seen that comment pop up a couple of times in comment sections and stuff. What was it? Was it 3D? No, that's not.
I can't remember. I think the type of droid he was like a surgical assistant droid.
Yeah,
I think he was
similar
just
to what they use on Camino, isn't he? The one that
that's it. He's like he's not a BD series. He's a BZ. Well, they say BZ series. If you're British, of course. But yeah, that was him. And I think he was just kind of reprogrammed to just sort of help Cad Bane in his little day-to-day routines of the ship and stuff like that. But I still want to know where he went. I'm like, where's he at? Maybe we'll see him. Who knows? But still.
Indeed. I mean, it could well be he might have just been back on the ship. Maybe we'll see him in the next episode. But yeah,
Maybe.
it's I like that. I don't know. Like the Ahsoka one is again a funny one. Did they need it? I don't know. But it was great to have it in, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, like I don't know if I needed that, but it was great to have in. But again, I think back to that earlier point, seeing the galaxy through Mando's eyes, Ahsoka was able to be that kind of monologue and narrative to him, which would have been very different. It was coming from Luke, so I think it was a great use in that respect. But yeah, great episode. Do you dare? Oh, have I frozen?
You have, yeah. I was just going to ignore it until it fixed itself.
That's a bit weird. I'll see if it switches. It probably won't, but never mind. It has done this before, but I'll switch it back. As long as you can hear me, that's a good thing.
Sure.
But yeah, where do you dare wager any sort of guess of where we're going next week or this week?
I mean, we've had the briefing scene, I call it, where Black Chrysanthemum's there and Mando and Boba and Fennec Shand. So they're all talking about the plan, what they're going to do with the Pikes and everyone like that. So we've had our briefing scene. Essentially, we're just going to see it all play out with what they're going to do. Boba's going to take point, as he always does.
Will he be right? The Rancor?
Oh, that's coming. That, I mean, they've foreshadowed that. Sorted. They forecast that like as soon as Danny Trejo brought him in.
Yeah.
And saying, oh yeah, it's like, what did he say? It was impossible to do it, or that it can be done? He said something along those lines.
Yes.
I know that they mentioned that people can ride them or they can't.
Yeah.
And then Boba obviously said,
told the story of the witches of Dathomir who used to ride them.
That's it.
And then he was like, okay, I want to ride it.
Yeah. So I mean, we're getting that. I mean that clearly right there for me was foreshadowing it. If it's not in there, it's a complete waste of dialogue in my opinion, because why introduce a Rancor if you're never going to use it? He was used as like a tension breaker, I guess, when he had the meeting with the other like the leaders of like the separate areas. It was kind of like used there. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's a resemblance of how Jabba used to run things. Like if you seriously don't, if you want to go against me, we're going to go back to those old ways. Hence the Rancor. But yeah, if he's not riding that Rancor, I'm sorry, it's like you missed out on a huge opportunity there. That was so cool to see.
What it makes me wonder though is what sort of battle would it need to be for him to do that? Because then it feels less crime lordy, like Godfathery, and feels more like just like almost stood across the sands of Tatooine on a drawn line, and like they charge at each other. A bit more like great Game of Thronesy, because you can't like sneak into somewhere riding a Rancor. But I cease to be amazed on this show, but we'll see. But
I think it's a hard one to pick because I don't know how many Pikes there are in the Syndicate. We've seen the handful of people come off the transportation ship, and we saw the handful that Cobb Vanth took out.
Yeah,
but we don't know how many there really are. So it could. I mean, I'm not expecting some Lord of the Rings Adventures Endgame kind of finale, but if you are going to introduce a Rancor is going to be a muscle. A Rancor needs to do something that is either going to be the helping hand behind the enemy, the helping hand with like the pawns of like the first soldier frontier, or you're going to have him push something heavy like some giant ATST,
Yes.
for argument's sake. Let's say they got hold of an older ATST and they just went, you know what, it's working, we'll use it against them. And then there's a Rancor and an ATST just going at it, like fighting it out. Like,
That's a
I
scene
just
I
thought of
didn't
that
know I
on the
wanted to
spot.
see.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just thought of that as I was just spewing, and I just thought actually that would be really cool. But like it's kind of like that example. Oh, they've got something big. Well, we got something
Yeah.
big too. That kind of thing. So that's the only thing I can really see coming from that.
The only other, I'm trying to think how it would work, like crime lordy, but I suppose if they wanted to retaliate for the kind of the bombing, you know, Boba knows where the syndicate are based. Potentially, a Rancor could probably barge through a wall, so maybe it kind of acts as a bit of a battering ram, and then they storm the
Yeah,
building. But I guess we'll see. But yeah, as long as we see it in action in a good way, in a badass way,
sure.
then I'm happy. I'm definitely happy. But on that point with the Pikes, obviously we don't know how many of them there are, but what we do know is Cad Bane is working for them. We don't know
Sure.
who else is working for or with them. Kira and Crimson Dawn is the biggest one. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I honestly would have thought we would see Kira, or at least there would be a mention of her by now.
Yeah.
To leave it towards the very last episode, to me, feels like we might not see or hear of anything from her, but at the very same time, it depends where they're wanting to go after this show. Mando's end scene credits was introducing Boba. We could have an end scene credits that's introducing, well, not introducing, but having Kira reappear, and then we have, you know, them go off and do something with that. It's at this stage, if you're going to leave something to the last episode, it's going to lead on to something else, and it's just going to keep us waiting, I guess.
Yeah, and I thought when we were talking earlier about what was needed, did we need that Luke and Grogu scene? As brilliant as it was, do we need it in the Book of Boba Fett? I feel like that Mando didn't need to go and see Grogu before he helped Boba, like for the story. They could have done that, and then that could have been the post-credit scene, is him going there, and then that would have really teed up. But I suppose they built on it a lot. That could have really got into the first episode of the next series. But I don't know. The Kira thing's a funny one as well, because she's very prominent, right? So a lot of people will only know her from Solo, but she's really prominent in War of the Bounty Hunters now. Now, that is no coincidence for me. That, you know, talk about foreshadowing. You're building a character up here to deploy her here, and that's the really story of the rise of Crimson Dawn. So yeah, it would definitely make sense to bring her in. But I also agree, unless they're going to drop her as the end credit scene or right at the end as a prominent part, that leads on to something else. And I think I'm sure I've heard that she has her own series lined up, but it's not. So Amelia Clark currently signed on for a series with Disney Plus, but that's all we know, and we don't really know that.
That's it, yeah. Because I mean, looking at it from the filmmaker's point of view, it's not like I know that there's certain areas of the fandom where they will deep dive into a lot more Star Wars lore, such as the comics and the novels, to find out more information. But then I think they also do have to acknowledge that the fact that there are some Star Wars fans that are just happy with the movies. They're not really too interested in watching an animated show. They're not really too interested in reading a comic book. So I feel like from a filmmaker's point of view, if you're going to have Maul have his little cameo at the end of Solo, and then Kira being all like, yeah, I'm in charge now, there would need to be something more from that in live action, because everybody that's going to be watching Solo, they're going to be like, oh yeah, so can't wait for Solo 2, you know, because clearly that's what it might have been building up for. But now that we're in Book of Boba and people are starting to watch that, if Kira were to show up at the end as a end credit scene, for argument's sake, then it's going to throw your mind back to Solo and go, oh, so this is where you've been, this is what you've been doing all this time. So yeah, or even in this potential new series that she signed up for, there is your opener on the filmmaker's point of view, because I feel like they have to take everybody into consideration. It's balancing with I'm going to leave this information out for the people that will read the novels and the comics, because this part of the information really isn't that important. But I'm going to do this big twist right here that I kind of have to address later on for the people that aren't going to read this later on. So
yeah,
it's that.
Yeah, exactly that. I suppose there's so many different ways they can go with it. I always thought they'd said that this was a kind of one and done series for Boba, but there's talk, and I don't know if it's just people talking, but talking about, will we get a series 2, like a season 2? The way it's going, you feel like there's still so much to talk about that could very well happen, but who knows? And that's the thing, is there's so many planted seeds now, right? Because as you see, we've got Ahsoka, got Mando season 3, potentially a Kira series, potentially another Book of Boba series. So that could go anywhere. Given that, forget about where it's going to lead into, though. Who do you think could show up, and who would you like to show up? Because obviously the bounty hunters, there's a lot of them, right? So in the kind of the end battle.
I like the end battle. It's like, well, if that is what it's leading up to, which I think it is, it feels like going back to the briefing scene that I was talking about, you know, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do, and you had Black Chrysanthemum, Mando, and everybody in there. I feel like here are your main key players. So we kind of always have that in every kind of movie that has like a big plan of an attack. There is always a briefing room, and you always see the key players involved in that. And then you always get the shock appearance of someone else turning up. So a great example of this in the briefing room is Han Solo turning up at the end, where he helps Luke, you know, get the people off his back so he can destroy the Death Star. So here is your surprise person that's just shown up to help out. And I figured if we're ever going to introduce more bounty hunters in the very final episode, it will be something like that. And I was always the complete opposite way around when I was looking at Cad Bane. Like, nah, he's too old. He ain't going to show up. He's long dead. He's you know, he's worm food. He's nothing. And then I got Bosk, and I thought Bosk is a more likelier person to show up because of his relationship with Boba, and you know, Cad Bane, and he's probably dead, etc. So I feel like if we're ever going to have anybody show up, it'll be someone saving Boba's life. Like Boba's just about to be shot for argument's sake, and then maybe Bosk dives in and saves him, and then he helps join in. Something like that. I even said Embo at one point. I said Embo would be pretty cool, but there's not really that strong relationship, and there's no real explanation as to why he would be in the area of Tatooine. And then a lot of people said, oh, well, Embo's dead. I'm like, oh no, Embo actually lived long into the sequels. He just retired on some farm somewhere, and he was just happy chilling out, like grazing some crops and stuff. So he has like a very long lifespan. I just don't know when he retired. That's the only thing. But yeah, like when we're looking back at which bounty hunters there could be, my mind automatically goes back to the Clone Wars series, where there is that episode of Cad Bane and Embo and everybody, and there was Obi-Wan in disguise. Can't remember his name. He was in the disguise, and they were going through that whole contraption about who's the best bounty hunter. Like my mind goes back to that, and all those bounty hunters were there because they all showed their worth, and that's how, well, they all have their own missions and stories that are legendary. And it goes back to then, and I can't pick anybody out of that group that I think would be there for Boba other than Bosk.
Yeah, but exactly. So I totally agree. I think the connection, but again, this is the thing, right? So Empire Strikes Back, which is the last, no, sorry. So this is where it all starts kind of a bit messy. So Empire Strikes Back, we see Bosk on the bridge of the Superstar Destroyer with Boba, but they're all there, but they're not together. They're all kind of independent at that point. Boba goes off, gets Han in carbonite. Then in live action, the next time we see Bosk is on Jabba's seal barge, ever so briefly, in Return of the Jedi, like ever so briefly. But in between that, right now, we have War of the Bounty Hunters, where Bosk tries to get he actually tries to cash in the bounty that's on Boba Fett from Jabba the Hutt,
Yep.
because Jabba thinks he's sold Han to somebody else, and Boba chops his legs off. So unless they are very much like, nah, it's all business. Like it's just business, isn't it? Like unless they're cool with that, and that is part and parcel, then
I would say that they are, because I would say that that is Boba's upbringing, and Bosk was a huge part of Boba's upbringing. Bosk helped him when he was a kid just to help grow into the person that he is today. So I would feel like as cold-blooded as Trandoshans can seem to be, he would have some care towards Boba and have some respect towards Django. Like, I've got such mad respect for Django. I'm going to do you right. And I'm going to make sure that you're going to be, the greatest that you could possibly be. And I feel like...
Sorry, I was going to say, have you read Dark Disciple?
No, it's on my list.
Okay. So just on that point, very briefly, not a spoiler at all, but there's a small part where somebody goes and they're trying to find Asajj Ventress, and they can't find her, but at this point she is a bounty hunter, kind of tailing on from where she was in the Clone Wars. And so the best way to find her is through other bounty hunters. So they go to a cantina on Coruscant, where they know bounty hunters frequent, and sit at a bar next to Bosk and speak to Bosk, and then Bosk addresses, he kind of agrees to do the introduction, but he does it through Boba, and it's almost, Boba's quite young, probably he's in his teens at this point, but he recognizes Boba as the boss. Like he almost has his superior even at that age. There is certainly that level of respect for him there. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Like Bosk will always find that connection to Boba.
That's it. And especially when it comes to like his upbringing and like how you've described their relationship to be in Dark Disciple, it would not faze me in any way if Boba was brought up to think that, some days we're going to be like this. Other days I may try and hurt you a little bit, but it ain't personal. It's just business. That's the thing. This is the way our employment is. And bounty hunters are going to cross paths, and they are going to try and maybe double cross is a little too strong of a word, but I mean, if you got two bounty hunters going for the same bounty, I'm sorry, but a man's got to eat. I've got to get him. So like, I actually knew this from Harvey. Harvey told me, I've not read the comic line of War of the Bounty Hunters, but Harvey did tell me about the whole cutting Bosk's legs off. But I would imagine Boss seeing that as like a mercy thing, because it's like, well, my legs are going to grow back. You could have done a whole lot worse. I know what you're doing. This is business. You won. That's fair enough. Respect to you. So I feel like that's just an average Wednesday between them, if anything. So.
And it does go back to Boba's point that we've seen in the book of Boba Fett that you mentioned earlier. It's like, look, we're out here killing ourselves for idiots, So, yeah, and even Cad Bane's point, Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked for the Empire. Like they do recognize each other while they're out there. So I think the only thing with Bosk, and as long as they acknowledge this and don't just totally try and overshadow it, is his relationship, a fiery relationship with Black Chrysanthemum. One being Wookiees and the other being Trandoshan, but particularly they have met and they hate each other. And Bosk basically has put claim to Black Chrysanthemum's hide. So as long as there's something there that at least kind of acknowledges that exists, and they're setting it aside, or they'll kind of stay on other opposite ends of the operation or whatever, that could work for me.
That's interesting, because I didn't know that. So Bosk has laid claim to, hit Black Chrysanthemum, his corpse.
Yeah, he's tried to kill him, and he's tried to kill him in I can't remember the comic that it's in.
So that's very interesting, because it's if there is going to be a final battle and Bosk does show up, and obviously Black Chrysanthemum is on his team, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I would like that acknowledgement. I would like that to be, Black Chrysanthemum probably, doing what he tried to do, doing what he did do to the other Trandoshans in the bar, and he wants to go for Bosk, and Boba's like, no, now at the time. Like, after, you can go and do whatever the hell you want, but right now we need to focus. And Bosk, being honorable as he is in the Bounty Hunters Guild, I would say, yeah, cool, I'm fine with that. But when this is over, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, and again, talk about foreshadowing. So you've got Black Chrysanthemum in the Sanctum, with that happening, and there's Trandoshans. You then had episode 1, or chapter 1, where the Trandoshan came in with the Wookiee hide. So it basically shows because to a lot of people, if all you've ever done is watch the movies, maybe a couple of the shows, or even just the shows, you don't know a lot of that lore comes from the comic books and even legends and all of that. So that for me is kind of drip feeding it in and just kind of hinting or even acknowledging, you may have heard this, you may have heard that Trandoshans and Wookiees don't get along.
Yeah,
we're telling you now. We're telling you. So yeah, I think, and my thought up until recently was, up until probably after that last episode, was that Bosk will come in, but he'll be on the side of the Pikes. But then, kind of to your point, I do think, like, would he do? It's difficult because there's one hand you would say, would he not try and stay loyal to Boba? Would he always kind of have that respect for Boba? But then on the other hand, given it's business, would he kind of go with whoever's paying him? Will he do it? Will he do a U-turn halfway through and change sides? I don't know.
Yeah,
I just want to see him. I want to see him.
I definitely want to see him. I mean, at this stage, it is only speculation. We don't even know if there is going to be a final fight. We just know that
there's a briefing about expectations. We don't have
exactly.
Ourselves, do we?
And I feel like if anybody's going to be, listening to this in the comment section and hearing the ideas, and if you ever thought, wow, that sounds amazing, don't expect that. That's the only thing. It's what's going to destroy your whole view on what you want to see to what you're going to get. I've always said, just never pass judgment on something until you finish the whole series. Have your criticisms on the episode, by all means. That's what they're there for. It's what any media is out there for. Criticize them respectfully, of course, but really pass your judgment until it's all been complete, because you will have a boring episode that probably means nothing, but that boring episode was probably pivotal to what happened at the very end. So you have to take it all in.
The style of the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian being chapters is very evident of that, because what they're showing is we're a snippet of a story, right? So yeah, I always say that is always give something a series. Like, don't give up after a couple of episodes. Sometimes it can be tough too. Do you know? I don't know if you've seen it, but I've only ever Breaking Bad one series, and I've never come back to it.
Never.
But that's everybody always says, oh, you need to get to like series 3 and stuff. Even my wife. So even my wife watched it before we got together, and she was like, it's the best thing ever. And I'm like, I struggled through the first series.
Honestly, it has been hailed, and I agree with them. It's been hailed as the greatest. I'm not saying one of the greatest TV shows that has been written in years. What gets me the most about Breaking Bad. We're going so off Star Wars right now, but what gets me about Breaking Bad so much, it's the character development. It's seeing them change over time, because you're with them in real time. You are seeing Walter White's choices from day one. And what I love about this in the costume department as well, the color of his shirts change through as like the darker he goes, the darker his shirts go. So he starts up with some like white, beige, pure person that has good intentions. No spoilers here for that show, because I really do want you to watch this, Opie. But when at the very end, when he's dark and he's making very horrendous, evil decisions, he's wearing black. And that's like a very good like visual representation. But There's so much I could pour into Breaking Bad. So much. It's a beautiful series. Like, if anything, just watch it to the point of when you get to I can't remember his name, and I hate myself for this because he's such a brilliant actor. Who plays Moff Gideon? Him, Gus, in the show.
He's got like a Latino name, hasn't he? Like a Latin
He
name.
has, and I don't want to try and pronounce it because I'm just not good with that. Exactly. But he's just such an amazing actor, and he brings this wonderful balance of, I can be your friend, but at the very same time, I'm going to be your end if you do not approach things a certain way. He's fair, but it's business type of thing. And if you can make it to him, it's not like it's a chore to watch it until he arrives. But if you can make it to him, you are watching it throughout the rest.
Okay. Giancarlo Esposito, that was it.
Yes.
Thanks, Harvey. Thank you. I'm down for that trade though. James buys Lego and I watched Breaking Bad. Sure. Just all he needs to do is get the Ahsoka brickhead, I'm sure.
To be fair, yeah, okay. I'll get looking if that means you're on it. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'll make a note of it and then we'll talk. I feel like it's something because I remember it being out because it must have been one of the very first things Netflix really had. Because I remember it was like I knew more about Breaking Bad than I knew about Netflix at the time.
Yeah. It's I had to I was in college, I think, at the time when it came out, and I don't think I had a Netflix account, or it wasn't on Netflix, I don't know, but I ended up watching it on some dodgy site, and luckily they had every single episode in good quality, and I thought, I'm just going to sit here. I was glued to my desk watching it. And the first season's not even that long because there was this the writers were on strike at the time, so they had to kind of like wrap it up a little bit. So the first season wasn't very, very long. And I will be the first to admit this. When I watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I thought, this is boring. Like, why the hell am I watching this? This is so friggin' boring. But as soon as you get to the 3rd or 4th episode, I thought, oh, okay. Like, what you doing there? I was hooked immediately.
I feel like I could go back because it has been a while since I watched that first series, like years. So I feel like it's been long enough that I can remember parts of it, and obviously I know the concept of it, but it's been long enough that every episode there'll be moments I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So it's like I'll make that my pledge. I will rewatch Breaking Bad, and I'll watch it all this time. But yeah, I told you we'll go off on tangents. On that last episode though, 2 more things I wanted to cover off. So the Order 66, brilliantly done. I'm such a sucker for like Easter eggs. I really wanted it to be Apple, and everybody's like, it's Apple. Then I saw someone did a quick analysis of it where they zoomed right in, and it was just like a little white mark on his helmet that made it look like a bit of an arrow. And I was like, oh no. So there's that. But I know Harvey has thoughts on this, but do you hazard a guess at do you have a suspicion of who broke Grogu out?
Me and Harvey have actually spoke intensely on this subject about who could have saved I was about to call him Yoda, Grogu. If anything, I don't think it matters because it's more what story are you really going to tell about who saved Grogu? Because that we know the outcome, and I know you could argue about that with anything, like, well, why are you telling the prequels when we know the outcome of Vader? So if it is going to be someone, it needs to be someone that's actually going to be making more of a prominent appearance in future series or movies, most likely series. But if you're going to do it for someone that's just purely a cameo, it could literally be anybody. I said to Harvey, I wouldn't be surprised if it's no one that I've ever even seen before. Like, it's just some random youngling that saw Grogu, knew to help him, got him away, and they tread it like some Superman on Krypton scenario where, this whole thing's going to hell. We'll get you on a ship, we'll fly you off, and that youngling or whoever it was dies by the orders of the troops. I don't think it is anybody specific. If it is, I mean, I'll slap myself in the face over it because I'll be like gutted that I wasn't right on this scenario. But I feel like I don't want to look in every single scenario and every flashback and think, oh, because we're getting a flashback, that means something. That means we're going to see someone, or that means we're expecting to see someone. So when I saw Clone Wars, I was actually half expecting to see a very hooded figure with a blue lightsaber at one point. I thought we would just see him cross over, or you would just see like a parting in like the troopers, and then he walks towards, and then that's it. It cuts out. That's all he wants to remember. I thought we were going to see like not Anakin. Well, obviously Anakin, but you don't see his face. You just see his hood up. Yeah. So you see that. I thought we were going to see that at that stage, and I was so like excited for it. It didn't happen, but it was still like an awesome thing to see, you know, the Legion just go ham on everybody. But me personally, I would just like it if it was just someone that just did right by seeing a child in help and treated it like the Krypton scenario. I'm going to get you to safety, and it doesn't matter about me. It matters about you right now.
Which would be the very Jedi way. I agree. And one, there is, as I say, there's always this expectation that we love Easter eggs and we love them connections.
We do.
But then there's also the other thing that it was a Dave Filoni episode, and it almost feels like things don't happen, like everything happens for a reason, and there's always that connection. But there's also the question that it could be someone, but they haven't decided who it is yet. It could be that actually what it creates is the opportunity for a story arc to continue, or to build a new character, somebody who, a bit like your point, a Jedi that survived Order 66, because we know there are some, but someone who just got him out of there, then went on his own path, and we get their story down the line. Could well just be that. If it was anybody we know, my guess is Jocasta Nu. I feel like
I said this with Harvey, actually. I said it could even be the librarian at this stage. Because I know that she survives Order 66, but she ends up coming back to try and rescue some of the archives and stuff. But ultimately meets her fate when Vader's there waiting for her. And I thought it could be anybody, and I just used her as a joke and said it could even be the damn librarian at this stage. It could be anybody, because at this stage, for me, it doesn't matter. We know the outcome. It could be anybody. And it was like, now that you've said that, I feel like, oh, so maybe there's more people that's thinking it could be Jocasta Nu, the librarian. That's that might be it. So, but she like that.
I feel like it just would be in her nature to do that. She was keen to preserve, and she preserved the knowledge, and if she'd seen Grogu, she would have kind of naturally taken him. The fact that whoever it wasn't battling, so the 501st were coming in, and we don't know the whole context of, like, Grogu seemed to be in a satchel, but we don't know where that satchel was in relevance to the person and all of that. So we don't know that. But if they were wearing a satchel or they were carrying him, they weren't engaged in battle. Again, she could battle. We saw her duel with Ahsoka, and I think she dueled with. Did she duel with someone who tried to break in? But in the Clone Wars. But that would not have been a natural instinct. It would have been to try and preserve and escape. So I feel like it lines up, but at the same time, I totally take your point, and I think there is great opportunity there that actually it's somebody unknown, and it sets the opportunity to build a story that is yet unknown.
But it could be a thing where, like what you said, where if it's just a complete, like, the writers haven't decided, because it would not surprise me if they just said, we're going to throw this scene in there because if it never comes to fruition, we're never going to really look back on that and go they missed out. But at the very same time, like you said, they could create themselves an opportunity just to see, where is the story going to go? Oh, we're going to make this series, and then say, you know what really connects to this story? Order 66 with Grogu, and then that's when they throw in this new character that they've just made up, or a reoccurring character for all we know, and then just throw him in there. So could be anything.
Indeed it could. Hello, Mr. Studbud. Zane, Block Studios. We're just drinking orange juice tonight. We're avoiding the drink. Hope your stream went well. Yeah, it's so the final kind of well, it's a bit of a two-parter, but I'll ask the first one first. But chainmail or lightsaber?
I don't know, and it kills me thinking about this. Like it gave me a headache at one point, like just trying to, because the problem is we don't know Grogu. We've seen him. We've seen he's adorable. We've seen he's funny eating, frogs and stuff. He's hilarious
as well, by the
way. Yeah, but no one can say, "Oh, Yoda would." I keep saying Yoda. Oh, Grogu would definitely do this. Oh, Grogu would never do that. You don't know Grogu. You just know him through his physical aspect, and you can see what he likes. He likes to eat. He likes to play with like little nozzles on Mando's ship. That's all you know about him. So if he chooses one or the other, you can't be all like, oh well, that doesn't make sense to what Grogu would do. So when I'm looking at something like that, that's what makes everything so much harder, because I can't read him. With a character you can read, you can see them in a certain situation or somehow foresee a certain scenario and go, well, that wouldn't have worked out if he chose this decision. So when I'm looking at something like that, anything can work. I wouldn't even be surprised if this is a test from Luke. I would be like, if it turns out where he says, oh, he's choosing the chainmail, well, that's fine, because you know what? I just want to see your loyalty. I want to see where it lies, because if you're serious about this and he chooses the lightsaber, he might end up just giving him the chainmail anyway and say it's important to love and it's important to have friends. This isn't all it is. This gorgeous planet that I found for us to teach, this isn't it. This is just a safe space for us. So if you want to go and see your friend, go and see your friend. But maybe right now we just focus on the little details about defending yourself and stuff, because it's a huge point that I've been seeing a lot of, where people are, they've been saying, oh, I think it was wrong for Luke to give him that decision because about attachments, and this was like the downfall of the Jedi, about how they were led to not feel anything. I thought, did you guys not watch Attack of the Clones? Anakin even said that they're encouraged to love, and Kenobi, Obi-Wan is a fine example of someone without attachments. He's someone that lost Satine, who he cared and loved. We know he loved her. He loved her deeply. But the fact that he didn't have that attachment means that he was able to accept what happened and move on and grieve like anybody else would do and just move on. So I don't think Luke is teaching that, because they never taught that to begin with. I think he's most likely testing him. And if he chooses the lightsaber, you're going to get the chainmail. If you choose the chainmail, then I'm going to support your decision, etc.
I agree. I think that is definitely a possibility. And so the way I've gone with it is, whenever I make a case for one, I immediately argue with myself and make a case for the other.
Yeah.
Now, what you've just said has almost made my mind up for me. Because when you say we don't know Grogu, but all we know is he likes to eat and he likes little kind of things to play with. So the frog scene felt like a bit of give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man the fish and he'll eat forever. So it was almost like, here's the frog, that you can have the frog, but if you stay with me, you can have all these frogs.
Yeah.
And then the play thing is how his eyes lit up with the lightsaber, both when Luke was training with his own and then when he showed him that. So I feel like that's in line with Grogu, but at the same time, that's me sitting here really picking out some. But I did think, when I watched it the first time round, I must admit, the whole frog thing, what that talked to me about was the teach a man to fish. That's what I took from that. What I'm kind of doing here is, you can have the one frog, but I'll show you how to have all of the frogs. So, but who knows? But yeah, I genuinely have no idea, and I do think they'll keep that for Mando season 3. I do think that'll be the last we see of them now.
Oh yeah, I'm not expecting this in this next episode. Everybody's expecting that, and I think that's what's going to be like the whole I'm very on the fence about this last episode about how the fans are going to treat it. I'm very like, are you going to accept what's happened? And you will be all like, well, if you don't get Grogu's decision in this next episode, are you going to trash Boba for that and not even acknowledge that this is probably going to be setting up for Mando or what? But I feel like we are going to get that answer in Mando season 3.
Yeah. So the second part of my question, and this one is far more open, and it's whether you've even considered it. But where do they go with Grogu? Because he's like, he's an infant right now. And Luke said that, what's a short time to you is a lifetime to others. You talk about like the sequels, but we can jump 300 years and Grogu's at his peak. But who will he be? He's got that darkness in him, or he's got that rage in him. Does he become like? Do you think they even know what they want to do with him, or do you think again they're just developing a character that has great potential?
I feel like it's a tough one with Grogu but also I also have to question his species. We know nothing of his species, absolutely nothing. It's a huge mystery. But what we do know is Yoda has been training Jedi since he was at the age of 100. Grogu is 50 years old. So I have to question the anatomy of his species. Like for the first 50 years, are you just like a toddler? And then for the next 50 years after that, are you going to rapidly age? Well, not rapidly age, but rapidly mature.
Grow,
to where you become what Yoda claimed, that, I've been training Jedi since I was 100 years old. So it depends on if they're going to, because they're not shy of doing this, if they're going to slightly retcon that little thing or not, I don't know. But
you look at this episode and how even just mobile he was once he opened up and embraced the Force and kind of unlocked himself. He really took leaps and bounds. So maybe he's been suppressing himself with that, and with everything that happened. Who knows? But you're right. We literally know. We don't even know the name of his race.
No, we know nothing. We don't know their homeworld. We don't know. We only know that there's 3 members of his species: Yaddle, Yoda, and Grogu. That's all we know. I don't want to assume that their species are particularly adept to the use of the Force, only because we've only seen 3 of his species. I have nothing on that. I would like to. I say I would like to. No one wants to see Grogu go, but I feel like there needs to be a time to say goodbye to Grogu. Yeah. Like you can't have the classic adventures of Mando and Grogu going off on a mission. I think Mando at one point is going to realize what I'm doing is way too dangerous for this kid to be around. The only reason Grogu was around was because he needed to get him from point A to point B to rescue him. To throw him back into the chaos just for the sake of I miss you isn't really a good excuse to bring a child along for bounty hunting missions. Yeah. It's not a good enough excuse. Mando knows better than that. It's why I just thought of this as I said this as well. If Grogu chooses the chainmail, is Mando going to encourage him to go back to Luke because of that reason? It's dangerous for me. Go back to Luke. Do what you do, and one day we will see each other again. And then that can be closing Grogu off. However they choose to do it, I feel like there needs to be a goodbye to Grogu. Like they're never going to see each other again. It's sad, but it's necessary, and it's a happy, sad situation. Yeah, like Grogu is finally happy to do that, and Mando's happy to just crack on and do what he knows best. I don't know. And then maybe if we get a trilogy, like a good decade or 2 down the line, then it's like 300 years into the future, and it goes, "Who are you? I'm Grogu," and it's him kind of growing up, and he's mastered the Force, and he's basically that new generation's Yoda. It could go anywhere, and I feel like that's where it needs to go. I feel like it has to be that way.
I agree. And it's one way or the other, isn't it? What's tough is they either have to break him off from that main story in such a way that makes him like you're not asking the question of where was he when the whole sequel era happened, and why is nobody kind of saying I would go and get Grogu, but then do they just does he die? Does he die before we get there?
I mean, it's a possibility. There's 30 years worth of storytelling right there. I mean, everybody was convinced that Kylo Ren killed Grogu, and I thought, I don't think we're gonna have like a repeat of Anakin during Order 66. I don't feel like they're gonna approach that again and then have some, oh yeah, Ben is just like his grandfather. I don't feel like we're going to have that. I feel like that's way too on the nose for us. But I mean, I don't know if I read this somewhere or if someone said this and I've just naturally believed this, but I thought it was I thought it was Ben Solo that was Luke's first student, so to speak.
I keep seeing this now. I've never read that source, and I wouldn't have even been anywhere near it. But a lot of people claim that. But yeah,
if it is true, if Ben was Luke's first student, because I've not read The Rise of Kylo Ren, and I know that there's some like backstory a little bit between him and Luke when he was a lot younger. I know that at the age of 10 years old, Ben decided to get trained up, and he decided to go and see Luke and be trained by his uncle. But I've heard, and I don't know if I've read it, but when it's like, oh yeah, Ben was his first student, and then Ahsoka said, oh, well, Grogu is to be the first student, then I'm thinking, well, does this mean that Grogu is not going to choose the lightsaber? And then but then what does that mean for, for the next, because I mean, at this stage, Ben Solo is 4 years old. So like, what does that mean for like the next 6 years? Like for Ben, like what is Luke going to be doing for these 6 years? Is he going to be roaming the galaxy, just doing his thing, like doing his own adventures? Or
well, where does it tie into the timeline of the Battlefront 2 story? Because there is the point, because that jumps all over the place as well. But you encounter Luke where he's hunting down Jedi and Sith artifacts.
Yeah, that's around 5 ABY. So that's like, I think it's about 4 years prior to where we are now, because this is telling the story of Operation Cinder, and it's more or less like the Battle of Jakku, which is where the Empire fell. So I think it is
a time jump, though. That's the problem. So you have Operation Cinder, but then there is a big time jump where Iden Versio gets old, and her daughter, I think, is then part of the resistance. But yeah, again, it's kind of where does that fall within it all? Because is that Luke? I can't remember because you're playing as one of the guys, the guy who rebels with Iden Versio, you're playing as him. And I don't know if it's in the original timeline or when it kind of jumps. And again, I don't know where it's one to take away. Do you know, sometimes, do you ever think, I wish I didn't know. I wish I didn't think like this. I wish I could just put Disney Plus on for 47 minutes every Wednesday morning and really enjoy it, then just come back to it the week after.
Yeah, I get it's just it's like the knowledge is the curse kind of thing, where you because you know a lot about it, you always end up having to just second guess yourself. It's like, well, I know this, so why isn't this happening? I know this, like that's the direction it has to go, or it should go. So you end up just like it's just a tough thing. Like I get you when you're like, oh, I just wish I just didn't remember it and just enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, I'm feeling like that with Boba right now with the last episode. I'm just enjoying seeing that for what it is. It's all brand new content to us. And it's just beautiful. But at the same time, because we know what's happening in the future, we can't help but just speculate. Yeah,
indeed. Okay, so speaking of the future, I'm going to take that off because we talked a lot about Book of Boba Fett there. But 2022 and probably into 2023 is going to be a big time, both for Star Wars fans and Marvel fans. What's weird is we come out of the Book of Boba Fett and there's going to be a bit of a gap before we get anything. I think Multiverse of Madness is the next movie. but I don't think there are any TV shows planned beforehand. So we've got a big gap. But then at the same time, it could get very busy, whereby with everything we're expecting from Star Wars, everything we're expecting from Marvel, it could be that we have very few Wednesday mornings where there's nothing on, which is obviously a good thing. But what are you most excited for this year? What are you really looking forward to across kind of everything?
Since we've had like the recent news about Kenobi confirmed that it is being released in May, I'm very excited. I think it has been. It's blasted all over Twitter. Exactly. They've not given us the date. Yeah, they've not given us the date. They've just said it's a May release. And I'm like, it's May 4th. Just say it's May 4th. Like, just stop doing that.
You haven't given us a trailer. Just give us May 4th. Yeah.
I was gonna say, just give us the date. And I was like, oh yeah, it's sometime in May. No, I'm just saying May 4th, mate. It's not hard. But I'm really excited over that because I mean, right now my mind will just jump from fandom to fandom. Right now, because we're just getting so much of Book of Boba, it's just all I've got right now is just Star Wars. Because Doctor Strange is coming out, so I'm very excited over that because of the trailer about where that's leading to. We've got the Moon Knight trailer that came out not long ago as well. That is looking cool, sick as anything.
Got the Batman.
The Batman, of course, absolutely. We've got that coming up. There's just so much. I think if anything, because I like to just switch between Star Wars and Marvel a lot of the time. So I think I'm probably more edging towards like the Marvel era because I have been rewatching like Eternals and Shang-Chi and stuff like that because I'm trying to get like really mixed in with like the Phase 4 category now.
Yeah.
And just looking out for like little Easter eggs and little bits and bobs here and there about where it's going to go. So yeah, I would probably say like the next thing in line would be Doctor Strange for me. I think that's probably the most exciting thing for me.
Yeah,
because it's like the closest thing to me. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what, the amount of rumors I've seen of who's going to appear as what version of who and all of that. But I think that's exciting because, and again, it's about expectation. Don't go to see that film simply to see who turns up as what. Just go and enjoy the film and then enjoy these people as they show up. But I think that's pretty much fair to see if that will happen. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward. I always feel it's weird because with Doctor Strange, I'm always a little bit underwhelmed going in, but that's a very positive thing because I'm almost like, I'm not hyped like Spider-Man or anything like that. I'm just like, okay, like, let's see what happens. But I always really enjoy this, even Doctor Strange movies or Doctor Strange elements of other things. I think he's such a good character, and obviously Benedict does a hell of a job of him.
It's understandable because when you say Spider-Man to anyone of any ages, there's a little bit of excitement there because it's like it's Spider-Man. I mean, yeah, of course, we love seeing him swing around the New York and kicking the bad guys' asses and having that having his quips while he's doing it as well. We love that about him. And then when you look at someone as Doctor Strange, he's not entirely all well known, other than those that have watched him in the comics or watched the old 90s TV shows like I used to. Yeah. So like he's not all that well known towards like the vast majority, I would probably say. So when you do see someone like Doctor Strange come up, you think, okay, I'll give it a go. And then like what you said, you end up enjoying it because Benedict Cumberbatch just really shows that level of arrogance to comedy and then he's putting the action involved. He really like gets deep dive into his role, and that's what I really love about him. But yeah, with this movie that's coming up, there's so many rumors and speculation about what's happening and who's going to show up, and like what you said, which version of that person's going to show up. I had a theory like they were going to bring in like the OG X-Men back, like we're going to like maybe get like I don't want to say Hugh Jackman, I don't want to say that, but it's like at one point Hugh Jackman did say he would entertain returning if it means him and Iron Man get to fight. But this was back in the era when Fox owned it. They weren't owned by Disney at this stage. So when I read that and I thought, well, you're never coming back then because I ain't ever going to happen. And then Disney bought Fox, and then apparently Hugh's now kind of like he's he's distanced himself. He's happy where he is. But then you have Ryan Reynolds that's religiously annoying him to the ends of the earth, asking him, come back. And he even like highlights this in his own movies as well, which I think is just his own little love letter to him. It's just beautifully done. And I like, we know what he's doing. He's pressuring him to do it. And I feel like that's going to pay off. And I would really love to just have just a 5-second cameo of Hugh like back in there. I would love to see that.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, I think a lot of people have, he played Wolverine for so long. Like he is Wolverine to us all. Again, I remember growing up with the 90s cartoon, which they're bringing back, and I'm super excited for that. But yeah, Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to bring him in and do that. But I guess we'll see. And then obviously we've got Morbius as well, which was bumped back again. I was gutted about that because I think was it last week or the week before it should have been released. Really excited to see where they take that. But I don't watch the Sony-verse like roadmap as much. I almost just take it one film at a time. So I'm like, okay, the next film is that, and I'll watch that. Then it's like, what's the next film? So I'm not as kind of invested. But again, I really enjoy that, and I feel that is more associated to the Spider-Verse that I know, which was the 90s cartoon, even though they're very different versions of those characters. Venom, Morbius, very different. But yeah, it's a
smaller universe at this stage. I mean, like the if you want to call it the Sony-verse or the Spider-Verse or what have you, it's still in its infancy at this stage, because I mean, because they do have that partnership with Marvel. Without spoiling anything, because if they still haven't seen it at this stage of the Spider-Man, they can integrate them very easily now, and it has been integrated. So I don't think we're going to get so much of the back and forth, like, oh, this week we're going to see Hulk bump into Morbius or something like that. We're never going to see anything like that, I don't think. But when it's going to be produced by Sony, made by Sony, and it's going to throw up on the big screen like Morbius is, we're just going to have something strictly in that universe.
Well, the next one I do know about is the Madam Web, which I believe is going to be set, and it's Dakota Johnson who's going to play her. And I saw, is it HZ Joe, who I never understand how you pronounce his name out loud. I don't know if it's kind of Joe or HG's, I don't know. Yeah. But he put a thing on about not really sure where they're taking this, and I'd said, well, maybe it's a path to the Beyonder, because I know the Beyonder is coming in the Marvel, in the MCU, or he's lined up for that. But as you've touched upon there, the Beyonder can kind of draw upon different universes that we saw. Yeah. So maybe that's, Madam Web is in that universe, in the Sony-verse, as the Beyonder's kind of scout to pick people out to go into, is it Secret Wars? Is that story where they basically go and fight Doctor Doom and everyone, but they're all from different universes? Who knows? Could go that way, but I don't know. It's cool. It's difficult, right? Because they don't want to overdo it. They don't want to cross over as much as they can, but they will clearly have characters that they really want to borrow from each other and use that connection.
That's it, yeah.
And they're not daft. They know what's good for one is good for the other as well. And it's just going to continue pushing stuff. So
I think it's also going to be a bit of an image thing as well from Sony, because I think that they just don't want other people to be looking at them thinking, oh, so you're just relying on Marvel to tell you stories. Yeah. Whereas they're going to tell their own stories that's completely separate from Marvel. Maybe they'll have an Easter egg here and there. But it's going to be, no, this is our story. It was written by us. It's nothing to do with Marvel. So I feel like they're going to want to do that a fair few times, because it's that image at the end of the day. They just don't want to. I mean, they do want the association with Marvel, considering what they've already done. But like I said, they want to be recognized as someone completely independent from what Marvel have built.
Definitely. And I think what they've done is the way they tell the story is very different. Like, you're watching a Sony film. Like, it's darker, isn't it? It's more adult. It's a bit more mature. Like, it's basically the film that we all want. So yeah, it's interesting, and I totally understand they won't want to be drawn back in. I feel like that relationship is probably led by Disney, and Sony like, look, we're here if you want us, but we're going to go over here. And Disney like, I know, but we're like, we'll keep your number. We'll stay in touch because Disney just know who Sony have got access to and want that connection. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'll just pause very quickly to see it, everyone, because we've just gone past the hour and a half mark. So we'll start to kind of wrap things up. But if you guys have got any questions for myself or James, feel free to chuck them out now and we'll kind of address those before we start wrapping up. But this is your kind of warning. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button. And if you've missed any of it, it'll be available immediately for you to watch back at your convenience. So there you go. That's the media side of it done. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a good year. Did you head over? I don't suppose you would have, but obviously being in York a couple of weeks ago, there was the sighting of Samuel L. Jackson in Leeds. Did you head over? Because that was
I didn't know that.
What? They were filming Secret Invasion in Leeds.
I didn't know that.
Did you not know this? Yeah.
I had there was a follower of mine during my live the other day. I don't know where it was, so I'm assuming it was Leeds. And he said I was there when they were filming Secret Invasions, and and he even said I offered Sam Jackson like some of my Doritos for a picture, and all he did was smile at me, but then got in the car and left. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And he tagged me in the video, and I've only just watched it this evening because I completely forgot about it. And I was like, holy shit. And then they did this big explosion scene, people running away. And then Sam Jackson comes out, he says the Doritos line, he gets in his car and he drives off. And I thought, okay, wow. But no, I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was somewhere in the UK and I knew it was somewhere recent, but no, I had no clue it was in Leeds at all.
So it was the weekend I came down to York because Brixton had come up. And then I'd said to Brixton, because he was heading home on the Sunday, but he had some time to kill. So I suggested that he headed over to Leeds because they've got the Lego store there. So he could go and check it out. And whilst he's up here, because he's from just outside of London. So I was like, why make the most of it? And go and, it's not, I think it was like £11 for a return ticket. So he headed over and then he was posting like, they're filming Marvel here. And then I saw another video of a guy where he'd asked, I think he'd said something to Samuel L. Jackson saying like, "Oh, can I get like a hello? Can I get you to see something?" And he just kind of looked at him. And Samuel L. Jackson looked back at him, didn't see anything, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a big Marvel fan." And Samuel L. Jackson just responded like, "Well, so am I," and just laughed and walked on. But yeah, I think the common thing that everybody saw, there was like a green Lamborghini. But yeah, Leeds. So there you go. It was on the Sunday, apparently.
Nice. Wow.
Nice. Indeed. But yeah, there you go. You could have been there. You could have been there, James. You could have been there.
Could have been, yeah. Kicking myself.
One thing we haven't really talked about, but like we can cover it briefly, is obviously your TikTok side of things. Because Star Wars TikTok or even social media where you offer an opinion is a volatile place. But at what point did you think I will create like what made you think I'm going to start talking about this?
And
how did you end up sticking with it?
Yeah, it's tricky because when I started, I just started doing memes that didn't really invite an opinion. It was just a simple like and a comment of haha, good joke, things like that. But then I can't even remember the specific subject, but it's just where people, that was it. It was where people, this was a long time ago, almost a year ago now, people were talking about how the Anakin's sacrifice was undermined by Palpatine coming back. So I thought, well, it's not. I mean, George Lucas kind of confirmed Anakin did, what he did, and he was the chosen one after all, and he did fulfill the prophecy because it was him that took Palpatine. So this opened up a dialogue, and they said, well, no, because if Palpatine came back, what did Anakin do? Says, well, Anakin did exactly what he was born to do. When he died, there's your balance right there. They started completely from scratch. And they said, yeah, but it's Palpatine. So I said, right, forget that it was Palpatine. Just imagine that it was a completely different other dark side user that knows the Sith, or not even the Sith for that matter. The point is, Anakin's sacrifice isn't to completely eradicate all of evil. It is to just wipe the slate clean and start again. And then that's where Rey comes in, and it's like, well, Rey's only preserving the balance that was recently left by Anakin, hence why he says, bring the balance back like I did. So it's there in black and white for everybody. And that's where it got started for me, about how it was seemingly me defending the sequels without me trying to shit on their opinion at the same time.
Yeah.
I was like, if you don't like it, that's fine. That's cool. But at least go in with the knowledge of what is correct and what is not. Because the one thing that I just really dislike about this fandom is the misinformation that gets sent around. Yeah. And half the time I'm under the impression that a lot of people throw the misinformation around and they know it's misinformation, but they don't care because it... Exactly, yeah.
Gets views, gets likes.
Exactly. So where... I never really offered much of an opinion other than those. If someone said something that I thought, you know what, that's actually a pretty good video and it's a pretty good learning point for someone out there, maybe you can see my point of view and go from there. If not, well, we had a discussion, end of that. But I've never really touched more on the opinion side of things, if anything. I've always tried to somewhat stay out of that, but if someone speaks up, I will say something back. But it's always people like... Darth Choco or Element 7, they're the people that will throw in scenarios and combat against toxicity. I've seen it many times, and they're a great inspiration for people like that. And I drew a lot of inspiration from Choco, where it comes to just don't ignore it, maybe say something. It's kind of the Jedi way, that Jedi ain't going to ignore this shit. They're going to do something about it. They're going to fight for good. And then I just start to delve a little bit more into the fact side of things, where, again, it's not inviting an opinion. I'm just stating a fact. And then somehow, some way, people will bring in their opinions where it's not really relevant, but they will do.
My personal favorite that is still bubbling away is whenever so every now and then people will comment, can I see these figures? Can I see these figures?
Right.
And obviously I have pretty much all of the Mandalorians. I think I have all of them. I don't think there's anybody. So people are like, can we see your Mandalorian figures? I'm like, yeah, of course, because I've got some stuff that's pretty rare, Pre-Vizsla being one of them. So I'll go through. And then I did, because it happened last time, I did the honorary mention. It's like, look, here's Boba Fett. Boba Fett's not a Mandalorian. But I know what you're asking. And if I don't show it, so I'm going to show it. And here's an honorary mention to Boba Fett, who wears Mandalorian armor. And then I kind of, just before I start showing it, said, but whilst all of you type furiously in the comments, I'm going to show those who are a bit more chill my actual Mandalorian figures. And sure enough, it always triggers a bit of a debate. But what I would see is this time around, it's certainly the conversation was more people as like, okay, well, why isn't he rather than be like, he is a Mandalorian? It's like, oh, I don't understand why he's not a Mandalorian. And that was really nice to see, is that people are a bit more kind of like, okay, well, I don't understand. And I think that's an important thing, is a lot of people are like, Mandalorian, like, we don't know. And I think Darth Choco, I don't know if it was Choco or Element 7 had said, by what we know, he could be, but from what we know, he's not, because there is stuff that we don't know. That's a really good point, and that's kind of how the dialogue evolves, really, is to constantly be like, okay, from what we know.
That's it, yeah, because it's like when you do look at some people that completely focus on facts videos, they do go for them for answers, because whether Google's like a hard place to navigate, because it can be, because it throws a lot of information out there, and sometimes you get two different answers to the same question. So they do go to those people and ask those questions. What is this? How did this happen? And I think the most important thing is they're not God. They're not omniscient. They don't know everything. And they're happy to say that we don't know. This is what we know. This is where it led to. But I will speculate, maybe this will happen.
Yeah.
And it's an important thing when you see people like that, that can make you feel a little bit better about not knowing something yourself. Like if Darth Choco himself, if Element 7 himself, if Jedi Connor himself, if they don't know this, how the hell can any of you commenters typing furiously in the comment section, you know? So it kind of like when I first joined TikTok and I didn't know something, it made me feel a little bit easy about asking a question. And I think a lot of the time people just don't have the confidence to dare even say or ask a question out of fear of just being ridiculed. Oh, you don't know Star Wars, you're not a real fan, etc., and all that crap. So it's
100%.
good to see that, and it's just nice to know that if you have a question, ask it and you will be safe.
Yeah, and I think really good point. That is the responsibility as us as creators to make a safe environment for people to say, I don't understand. Can you please, can you tell me? Can you please? And then, you know, I don't know about you, but that kind of motivates me as a creator when somebody then wants me to explain something like that. And then I'm like, well, I can certainly try. But yeah, that is pretty cool. Where do you, when you look forward, do you have an idea of like why you would like to take this? Are you just kind of riding the wave, really enjoying everything you're doing, or have you you got like 40,000 followers now, right? So like, you know, you're there. And I remember like 50 after I hit 10,000, 50,000 was the next milestone. That felt like a big one. Like 20 and 30, 40 feel great, but when you hit 50, it's like, okay, like that was a big deal. But where would you like to take it? Are you thinking about that?
It's it's riding the wave at this stage. Right now, where people are asking me questions and putting me in the seat, it feels like there's a fair few people out there that's coming to me and asking a question, whether it's just to get an honorary mention in a video or whether it's just out of pure curiosity. So right now I'm balancing three things and I am very, very busy with doing all of that. So I figured that I want to ride the facts thing out there, because I've always said I don't just want to be seen as the meme guy. I want to be seen as someone that really does know what he's talking about when he's making these memes. So I'm making memes. I'm making a series on droids right now. I'm just telling you about all the different classes and variations of droids. And I'm also answering people's questions at the same time. Someone asked a very, very simplistic question, and I don't mean that to offend that person in particular at all, but it's simple when you hear it. Why do the Jedi and Sith fight? Well, you think, well, come on, it's good and evil.
No, I saw that video and I was like, I don't know. Yeah. I saw that video and I remember watching and thinking, there's a story here.
That, I mean, there wasn't that much. I mean, I could have easily just left it and thought, well, come on, guy, just think it's good and evil. But I thought, well, no, think about it. At what point did they branch off from each other and say, you're wrong, I'm right, or this isn't the way? And I figured, let's find the origin to that. And we don't really have much of a canon source origin other than, you know, well, there was light and someone thought, let's try this. And they says, no, don't be crazy. And then it goes from there.
Oh, shit, lightning.
Yeah. So it's this whole thing of where it's just looking for the answers. And what I appreciate about anybody that asks me a question is some of the videos that I'm making that's answering those questions, I've never claimed to always have known that. When they've asked that question, I thought, I think that's a video there. Yeah. And I've never known the answer from day one. Like, I'll save that in my drafts for me to go back to. And I've looked at the question and I don't know the answer. So I will go and do the research extensively. And then once I've gotten all the facts together, I will then write the script out. I will then gather the pictures to the area of the script that I'm talking about. And then I will upload it. And then you'll get like the odd people that will say thank you. You get the other people that says I never know that. And then you get the other people that says, no, you're wrong. That's actually happening. And I thought, okay, well, it's fair enough. Show me a source, because I've done the research and I couldn't find what you said. But if you can send me that, great, and then I've learned something as well. But what I'm appreciating about when people are asking me those questions and I don't know the answer to that is I'm learning with them.
Yeah.
I've never known that. So it's like we're both on this journey together right now. You've asked me a question, I don't know it. So we're both learned from that. I've just done the research for you and I've just presented it in a video that's somewhat easy to comprehend.
And I think what's particularly motivating there is one, because I think you and I are very similar, and a lot of us are very similar. Like we're here to learn as much as we are to create. Like I've learned so much through TikTok in general, but then Star Wars TikTok. And I love learning new things rather than partnered on. But it's so humbling and it's so heartwarming when somebody sees you as their source of information. And like I look that for me is as motivation as anything. When people are like, we get it quite often in the Lego world where people are like, look, I've got £40 to spend. Like it was my birthday. I've got £40 to spend. What should I buy? And like you're like, all right, okay, let's like, what are you into? What do you like? Like, and I don't want to just see, and because these questions come up quite often. You don't want to just see go and get the X-wing. Like, because like everybody's going to tell you get the X-wing, so it's like, all right, let's see if we can find you a retired set that is selling on eBay within your price range that actually meets your needs. And I love when people do that. It's always really cool. So it's that for me is more motivation than anything, which is a cool thing. Final question from me. So we know anybody who's joined your lives, you never talk about this on videos, but when we join your lives, you're quite often gaming. You play Battlefront 2, you play a bit of Spider-Man. You're not into Lego, but will you be getting the Lego Star Wars game?
Oh, definitely, 100%.
Okay.
That's my childhood right there.
Right.
I say this all the time to Harvey, but I was there in the days when they released the games by the trilogy. They released the original trilogy first, and they released the prequels. They only released Force Awakens, then they just gave up after that point. But yeah, it's I'm 100% getting that, especially when they've improved the traveling aspect, the combat controls, everything about that game is just, it's a good mix between obviously Lego, but towards what I would expect to play. I'm going to compare this like Spider-Man. Like if you're going to like dodge and parry and whatever else the controls are in there, it's much more fluid rather than just press the X button to bash away and then that's it. There's a little bit more to it than that.
So here's the question: whose bright idea was it to release it on a Tuesday when it's one of the most anticipated games in about 3 years?
It's I think they were relying a lot on the pre-orders, maybe. Because I've seen that there's a steelbook going in game where you can get like the little Lego Luke Skywalker with the blue milk. You got that one, yeah.
So it's the deluxe version. So I've got you get the Lego, which it isn't. I don't believe it's an exclusive fig. I think it came in a poly bag with the blue milk, and then you get the Han Solo in carbonite steelbook cover. So I got that. You got to get that right. So. Yeah,
I get that.
It's somewhat. I saw a great question raised that it was like, because instead of being the 4th of May or May the 4th, it's or the 4th of the 5th. It's the 5th of the 4th, and obviously with America and UK and America and the rest of the world putting their dates the other way around, was it meant to come out on May the 4th, and just somebody put an email the wrong way around and put it in like digital order instead of phonetic order, which it's the only date that would actually work with, and it's on a Tuesday, but never mind. It is what it is. We get it a month early if that's the case. But you do look at it and think how cursed this game has been. That could actually happen, but if it has, it's gone in our favor. But
because a lot of people were comparing that to like the release of Cyberpunk, and they're like, no, if it's going to get delayed, we're happy because we don't want like a repeat of Cyberpunk or anything. So we were just sort of happy for them to take their time at that stage. But I think the time's come now.
Yeah, indeed. Jack's saying there, good point around PC, but I don't know. Like you could only get the digital copy, so you don't get those incentives. But I was talking to somebody, I don't know who it was. I can't remember who it was now, but about the PS5. If you've got the PS5 digital version, all you'll be doing is downloading it, and you won't get those physical assets. So and there is, there aren't many games that could do that, but in this instance, it is one of those. So yeah, I'm looking for. It's going to be an unproductive week for the country, or certainly for the nerds of the country. That's for sure. We're going to be very quiet, but that'll be fun. Anyway, as we start to wrap up, guys, James's link tree is in the comments below. If you're not already following, be sure to go and check him out. I do love his TikTok, so I can certainly vouch for him, and he wouldn't be here if I wasn't vouching for him anyway. But James, what have you got coming up, and what can people expect of you, and where can they find you?
Really, you can find me on TikTok under Darth Veritas. You can find me on Instagram, again, same name. Instagram's more or less just a repeat of what I'm doing on TikTok right now. But I do occasionally post up like a new Funko Pop just on Instagram exclusively there, just in case you're ever interested in stuff like that. What I've got upcoming is a new series after Star Wars Droids. I'm currently on the last 2 or 3 episodes to push up. And just Howie's comment. I'm on like the last 2 or 3 episodes of Star Wars Droids, and I'm going to be moving on to a brand new series. I'm going to be talking about Star Wars starships and what they mean, where they came from, their origins, who pilots them, just the whole ins and outs. So I'm going to be trying to break them down and organize them. It's very in its infancy, but that's the next plan. We're still going to get the memes. I'm still going to answer your questions, but yes, I will be moving on to another series.
Cool. I don't expect you to answer this, and even if you have the answer, I'd ask you don't answer it. But
okay,
I had a question in my head that came out of nowhere. So obviously Slave One or the Fire Spray gunship, but in Lego, when they released it, it was Boba Fett's starship. So is there a difference between a starship and a gunship? And if so, what is Slave One? Because somebody said it's a form of prisoner transport as well. I don't expect you to
I would have thought
it.
so. Yeah, it's that's actually a really good question, of which I don't have the answer to right now.
But it
would only be speculation.
It could be a great place to start a series, because obviously the whole name change is very prominent right now, Book of Boba Fett. So I'd certainly be interested. I asked it of Cool Guy Dom, and he was like, I was like, is it a gunship or is it a starship? And his answer was yes. So nobody knows. And then loads of people were commenting underneath like, I've never thought of this, but now I need to know. So it's a great place to start, and certainly hooks people in.
Absolutely. I will keep that in mind.
Indeed. Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. As I see, we could easily sit here and talk forever, but it is 10 o'clock for us, and it is what it is, and we always leave them wanting more. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving up your time once again, because you did come on between Christmas. It was great to have you on. Look forward to having you on again soon. Are you able to meet next week?
Yes, I have completely wiped my schedule. So yes, you have me on the next session. So yes.
Fantastic. So that tees me up quite nicely, everyone. If you're watching live or you're watching this back. So next week, Sunday the 13th, if you're not all out having a pre-Valentine's event. But we're going to do a Book of Boba Fett special. And we're going to have various creators relevant to different kind of fandoms, but very much Star Wars. And we're going to talk about this. So one of them being James, very much from that kind of lore piece. And then we're going to have Fem Ren is coming back as well. So they're all people who've been on before from that kind of cosplayer piece. We're going to have Ellie on, so Bricks and Bimbos, who will kind of represent the economy side of Lego, because who we've seen, how has it affected the prices of things, and this is probably true within like Funko market as well. And then we'll have Padawan Archer on as well, so John and Erin are coming on, and I might try and get one more person on as well. So it's going to be a bit of an action-packed show next week. Probably will be a fixed 2 hours rather than trying to squeeze it into an hour and a half, but the idea is we'll be talking about the Book of Boba Fett, so it will be an absolute special. So keep an eye out for that. Plenty of promotion, but as always, guys, it has been a pleasure to have you here. Opie-Verse. Someone, are you on the syrup again, mate? Phase 2 does seem to be creeping in. It does indeed. We just go as it feels natural. But guys, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you keeping us company once again. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a great week. And we will both, I'm sure, see you on TikTok this week. Peace. Love to all. See ya.